Greetings, I'm Jonathan Cruck, known as the Legend of Sleepy Hollow storyteller. Often I perform this story in Sleepy Hollow, at the old Dutch church or at Sunnyside, and at various other places including schools. Recently I appeared at the Briarcliff Middle School, and the students there gave me a bunch of questions which I intend to answer, to give you some answers about how is it possible that this over 200-year-old story can, well, give you a bit of a jump start and still be fascinating today. Well, here's what the students want to know. What did you most enjoy about performing The Legend of Sleepy Hollow? It was not the jump starts. What I enjoy most is looking across the crowd and finding everyone spellbound. And I know when I'm doing that, I'm doing my job, doing my best to engage them with this story. Now, Jake wants to know, how much practice do you put into your show? I'm always practicing. Even though I've performed The Legend of Sleepy Hollow over the last 20 years, hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of times, I still feel as though there's always a little bit more, a little bit less sometimes, and a little bit better that I can do. But to prepare probably took me about 40 hours before I was ready to bring it to the stage. Now, Emily wants to know, what made you want to do a one-person performance? Being a storyteller, it's almost always one person. I think I have more control over it when it's just me. The responsibility is all on my shoulders. I can't blame someone else. But it's also most intimate and fun when it's just me in front of an audience. Oftentimes without even music, though I do use music from time to time for The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. I just truly enjoy taking all that I have, all that I've done, all that I've practiced as a person, as a storyteller, and delivering it to audiences. Storytelling, after all, is the oldest art form. It's what all of us do to share what's going on inside of us. So that's why I like just being the only person to tell the tale. Now, Emma wants to know, what do I do during the summer or when Halloween season ends? Well, Halloween's over and I'm getting ready for Thanksgiving, and I get to do things like this. During the summer, I perform at libraries, summer schools, fairs, festivals. I do tales of summertime dragons and story theater tales kids can step into, and often I do spooky stories during the summer. When Halloween ends, I often do Thanksgiving stories. I do stories of Christmas and December holidays. In the winter, I tell stories from Greek mythology, the Middle Ages, fairy tales again from around the world, and for young kids, finger fables like The Rabbit and the Turtle. What made me realize I loved to act? Well, I'm not exactly an actor, but a long time ago in college, when I volunteered to do something for kids at a school, I brought stories I would tell my little brother. And at first the kids were sitting way back, kind of afraid of me. Who's this weird guy with long hair? Ah! But then, as I told the story, they grew closer and closer and closer, and it really touched my heart, and that's what inspired me to want to storytell. And that's when I really knew that I loved to tell tales. How many times have I performed? Well, over the course of my lifetime, I would guess I've probably done maybe 20,000 different performances. Maybe 4,000 have been The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Have I ever acted anything out besides The Legend of Sleepy Hollow? Well, I acted out that aliens abducted my homework once, but that's a different story. I also do, as a one-person show, A Christmas Carol and Rip Van Winkle, and I'm on the lookout for other big stories like that to tell. Have I always wanted to do this, or did I have a different dream job when I was a kid? That's what Miguel wants to know. But when I was a kid, a real little kid, I wanted to be a paleontologist and go out and find dinosaur bones. In high school, I wanted to become an oceanographer, and then toward the end of high school, a science fiction writer. But I got interested in storytelling because late in college I was drawing a lot of pictures and I wanted to illustrate them, and so I began to try ideas I had for stories, for books with kids. And now at last, 40 years later, I'm about to come out with a book, The Magical Wonderful Bulbul Bird, my very first children's book. Do I do this performance every year? I've been performing The Legend of Sleepy Hollow since 1996, and as a solo show since 2010. So it's been a while, and yes, I do it every year and hope to keep on doing it for many years to come. When was my first performance? 1996, of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Maybe 10 years before that, my first show as a storyteller. And how long did it take me to get the voices down? Well, I'm still trying to get them down, like Brom Bones, or Ichabod Crane, Katrina Van Tassel. Would you like a singing lesson? Oh, Ichabod, you're so charming. I'm always working on them. The hard part is getting them to be consistent each time. Do I ever get stage fright or worried? Pretty much all the time. But I breathe and tell myself, you've done this before, and just keep on going. And usually some kind of, oh, I don't know, little spirit comes and helps me along. Now this lad wants to know if it's profitable to be a storyteller. Not exactly. I don't have a fancy car or house, but I can earn a living doing something that I love and that I know enchants and brings joy and educates all. And that is priceless payment. Now, how many props do I have? And do I bring them all? And do I do the exact same performance each time? And have I ever forgotten a part while performing? I usually can just do the story without any props, but I like to have a few. I have a nice, beautiful backdrop that friends painted for me of the old Dutch church and the graveyard. I like to have a little tankard there to toast, and a book that I pretend to be Cotton Mather's History of Witchcraft in Old New England, and sometimes maybe a little candle, but I go very minimally with the props. And the performance, all the thousands of times, they're always different. More different than an actor on stage would be doing the same play every night. Mine are probably, 10 to 20% different each time, and that's what keeps it exciting and prevents me from being bored when I'm performing. Now, this student wants to know, don't you think it would be easier with someone else when you're acting? Not really, because I then have to work very closely with them, which could really be fun. But for this story, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, it was shared by one narrator. And so that's what I like to do, be the one storyteller. I have acted, and I really do enjoy, in fact embrace, times when I get to have other people acting with me. And how long did it take me to learn all those voices? And this is a shout out to AJ here. Yo, AJ! I'm I'm still learning to do the voices to keep them consistent. Hey, I'm AJ, and I got a shout out. Is that a pretty good AJ voice? Do I ever get tired of doing my performances? No, but my performances do tire me out. Sometimes in the midst of October, I have, not sometimes, but many times, I do 3 one-hour shows in a day. So that's pretty intense. And that means each day before the show, I have to take a nap, eat right, and then also get a good night's sleep as well. Now, Owen wants to know, when did I first learn about the legend of Sleepy Hollow? And what do I do besides storytelling? I first heard about it when I was a kid, and someone really was talking about Rip Van Winkle. It was in Rockland County visiting cousins, and bum 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 bum. I heard a roll of thunder, and I mean a roll, and my uncle said, "Oh, that's Rip Van Winkle's crew up there." Crew? Well, really, Henry Hudson's crew, says he. They're bowling. You know about Rip Van Winkle? I said, kind of. He slept for 20 years and woke up to find a new country had come about. And it was a story written by Washington Irving. He also made up a story about a headless goblin who lost his noggin during the American Revolution. And I was transfixed and learned all about the Headless Horseman in 5th grade. What's my favorite place to perform The Legend of Sleepy Hollow? It's the old Dutch church, that 1685 built, still holy place in Sleepy Hollow. That's where much of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow takes place. It always feels like the walls and windows of the church, even the tombstones, are, well, actually hugging me, holding me up while I'm performing the story. Now, Quinn wants to know why the legend is so popular. Because Washington Irving leaves us wondering. Was it Abraham Van Brunt, dressed up like the Headless Horseman, who frightened off Ichabod Crane, or was it the real ghost of that Hessian who lost his head in the American Revolution? We never quite know. Plus, the goblin is unusual, a headless horseman, and there's some humor in it, too. Ichabod Crane has the dilating powers of an anaconda. Now, who's my favorite character in The Legend of Sleepy Hollow? I think it's Mrs. Van Tassel when she says, "Ducks and geese are foolish things and they need looking after, but my Katrina, she can take care of herself." I really like doing all the characters. Who would I like to meet? I would like to meet the Headless Horseman himself and find out what compels him to still seek for his lost head. And, also, how many different characters do I play? As many as it takes. When I tell a Christmas carol, I do almost 30 characters. And sometimes it may just be one character. Like when I tell Aesop's fable of the thirsty crow. Caw! Eli wants to know, do I ever change what I say during performances? Constantly. It often drives the musicians accompanying me crazy. Now, what's he saying? Oh, speaking of musicians, someone wanted to know if I ever forgot anything. Now, once, early on when I was telling the legend of Sleepy Hollow, I was supposed to go from talking about Katrina Van Tassel to introducing Brom Bones. But I was just beginning to go into the part where Ichabod's in the school and he was taking all of the children's toys. I forgot about Brom. And the musician, Mr. Jim Keys, had to stand up and gesture, act out to me Brom Bones. So I'm looking way up in the balcony. He's away from the church organ, and he's there like this, holding his arms out. And I was wondering, why is he standing up? How come he's just wearing shorts? And then I realized he's being Brom Bones. And of course, when he sits behind the organ, up there, the pipe organ, he doesn't need to wear long pants. So anyway, that's why he just had shorts. But I go, oh yes. And when Ichabod was in the classroom, he was getting away from Abraham Van Brunt. And zoop, I brought the story right back. And because you're a storyteller, I could slip in the part about Brom Bones. Since that time, I've never forgotten Brom. Now, when did I know I wanted to do this? When, after entertaining at a birthday party, and the father paid me $50 back then, this was years ago, and he said, it must be really nice to do what you love. And I said, yes, thank you. And I'm still doing what I love. And Aaron also wants to know if I like pumpkins. I do, but I especially like roasted pumpkin seeds with a little bit of salt and hot sauce. How long did it take me to learn this story? Like I said, 40 hours. And Miranda adds, it was awesome. Thank you, Miranda. And everyone else for all of your questions. Now, if I wasn't a storyteller, what would I be? A teacher. I would love to maybe teach 4th grade or 7th grade English or social studies. Finally, do I make better horse sounds than Mrs. Moritis? Go ahead, Mrs. Moritis. See if you can make those horse sounds. And everyone, thanks very much for listening to the answers to your questions about how I perform the legend of Sleepy Hollow. Thank you.